Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be taking a look at Ogerpon-Cornerstone and how to use it in Regulation F. It is right now, I guess, being considered as one of the worst Ogerpons, which makes sense because, you know, Ogerpon Fire and Ogerpon Water are so good. However, I do think there's still a niche for Ogerpon Rock. We'll be going over some of that today, and more specifically, guys, you get all the same tools as all the other Ogerpons. So you're gonna have your Ivy Cudgel, and you're gonna want this to be the rock type. It is a 100% accurate rock move, which is phenomenal for you. And then you're gonna want your grass move. Generally on Ogerpon Rock, you're gonna go with Power Whip, right? You just want to have the big damage dealing move with the grass slot, and that's generally what you're going to see with Ogerpon. There's a case to be made for Horn Leech, which I don't think is ever going to really become an option. However, I tested Horn Leech Ogerpon Rock actually leading up to Worlds, and I was testing Horn Leech specifically because it would allow me to get more aggressive in front of Fake Out. So the concept being that if you get faked out or slightly chipped, Horn Leech would be able to reactivate your Sturdy, basically, right? It could get you back to full HP, and then you'd still have access to Sturdy. And the concept being there was very, very cool. I ended up deciding not to go with it. More often than not on this Pokemon, you're going to want to be more aggressive. But I definitely wanted to mention, you know, the Horn Leech concept of getting back to Sturdy and reactivating your ability, so to speak, because I think it's an interesting concept that I don't think too many people actually consider, but I like the concept of it. And then you're going to have Follow Me, and I think this is really what you're looking at Ogerpon Rock for specifically, right? The Ogerpon Fire and the Ogerpon Water, I feel like you can just be like, yeah, they're allowed to be more aggressive. We can get more aggressive. We can deviate from the Follow Me. You know, try to go Swords Dance, try to go Encore, right? But I think Ogerpon Rock specifically, because of Sturdy and Follow Me, I really do think you're going to want Follow Me on a lot of these options. Just because you can basically guarantee redirecting 2 attacks. And basically, if your opponent doesn't have a spread move, you are keeping your partner Pokemon completely healthy, and that on its own is phenomenal. And then of course, you know, you get your Spiky Shield, so this is going to be your standard Ogerpon Rock moveset. But like I said before, you get stuff like Encore. Brick Break is cute, not really necessary. Like I said, you get Knockoff, I guess, if you really wanted to, but just use Incineroar at that point. I guess Play Rough. Like I said, you get everything the other Ogerpons would. Stomping Tantrum is cute. Superpower is cool. Swords Dance if you wanted to. It actually gets Taunt as well. A lot of things for Ogerpon Rock to be able to do as a support piece. And that's exactly what you're going to see in this first set, right? You are probably just going to go 252, 252, 4, because there's no reason not to, right? You might as well have the most speed, and you might as well have the most attack, because you're surviving everything anyways with your Sturdy ability. There are different variants of that, which I will show you in a bit, but more often than not, you're looking at something like this. If you have the speed control, you might be able to get away with Adamant. I don't love the speed tier that you hit. Like 162 is kind of weird. Like 1 point slower than Jolly Ursh is like, it's like fine. I don't really care all that much that I'm slower than Jolly Ursh, because who's really running Jolly Ursh right now? But with my luck, I'm going to be that guy that plays the one Jolly Urshifu when I'm going to lose the set. So I do prefer, at least to start, you know, the standard. You go 252, 252 Jolly. You got a pretty good speed tier at 178. And I also want to be faster, or have a chance of being faster than the Ogerpon Fires, because Firepon is actually very difficult for a lot of teams to deal with. And being able to just drop an Ivy Cudgel onto that piece before they're even able to move can help support a huge chunk of teams. And you're going to get that KO unless they're like ridiculously bulky, which I mean, I guess you can run Impish Ogerpon Fire if you really wanted to. But anyways, regardless of that, this is what you're going to look at. This is your standard, guys. And your whole concept with Ogerpon here is going to be, you can redirect 2 attacks to keep your partner Pokemon safe. So you're probably going to want to pair this, you know, beside either some sort of setup. A lot of players like to use it on a Trick Room team as well. So like you go like Ogerpon Farigiraf, and then that just basically gets you almost guaranteed Trick Room, barring a little bit weird circumstances, whether double spread move, whether it's like you somehow get crit, or Mold Breaker, or Ivy Cudgel kills you. So like those are the only really ways to really stop that kind of setup, which is very, very nice. And I think that's why Sturdy, Follow Me, and an 100% accurate rock move is phenomenal. And this is what you're going to see 9 times out of 10, if not 9.9 times out of 10 on Ogerpon Rocks. And if you're looking to grab one, just take this one and try it out. There's no real reason to deviate. Or you can deviate. And, you know, you can have a little bit of fun with it because I think this is actually intriguing. 60 HP, 204 defense. Don't worry about the attack and speed. Those totally, I just kind of filled in the last little bits. I'll talk about the speed just for outpace Lando Eye. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to do that. But the concept being here is, like I said with the Farigiraf, right? If your whole concept is to try and get Trick Room up and to force your opponent to double target the Urshifu, or sorry, to double target the Ogerpon, you want to be surviving Urshifu water. And basically the 60 HP and the 204 defense will survive Choice, Scarf, Terra Water Surging Strikes from Urshifu water. So if your opponent has something like, you know, Scarf Urshifu and a Taunt user, right, you basically now can still lead Ogerpon Rock, go for Follow Me, even if they Terra Water, you'll survive. The Taunt will then follow suit, go into your Ogerpon, and you're going to be getting Trick Room up safely, right? The other added benefit of this defensive stat is you're also living a crit IV Cudgel from max attack Jolly Ogerpon Fire, which is very nice. Of course, now if they Terra, you don't live, but if they Terra, you don't live, but you live because they've lost their Mold Breaker and you have Sturdy, right? Whereas if they don't Terra, they can't kill you unless they're adamant, and even then I believe it's a roll. But if they're adamant, you're going to be moving first in this case, which is why I didn't lower the speed anymore. Because if I'm dying to the Jolly one, I don't care because I'm not dying to it. The adamant one's killing me, but I'm moving before it and I'm killing it. So the concept being here, like, you get the two things that can actually break through your Sturdy are now guaranteed survivals for you. And it's a little bit like unnecessary, I think. Like, you can just have a different game plan, you know, versus Terra Water, Scarf, Earth. However, I think on specific teams, something like this does work. The 52 attack, if you do crit the Incineroar, you're always going to be getting that KO, which is something I wanted to consider. I didn't really want to go lower than that. And then, of course, like I said, I want it to be faster than Ogerpon, specifically the adamant Ogerpon Fires, since those are killing me. And then I just decided to speed creep the Landorus. Like, I was already sitting at like 164, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just be faster than max speed Lando and get some damage off that way. But like I said, if you're using this to get Trick Room up and survive a good chunk of attacks, there is no real reason to maybe not try something like adamant and, you know, play around this way. The one thing I will say is don't go too slow, because there is still a huge benefit in Ogerpon Rock moving first. Being able to IV Cudgel things and take things out is phenomenal, right? I'm not going to deny that is by far the reason you're using Ogerpon Rock, right? You want to be able to follow me and redirect 2 attacks away, or you want to be able to force them to double up, or you're going to get 2 attacks off, right? You tend to see these kind of Pokemon on Sun teams as well, so the Urshifu Calc doesn't really matter. However, I did want to showcase it because I do think it's fun. You know, it's funny because people expect like Ogerpon Rock to always die to certain calcs, because why would you invest bulk in Ogerpon Rock? You have Sturdy, right? I'm not saying it's correct, but I think it could be enough to maybe give you an edge in certain matchups, which is something to consider. Overall, though, like I said, what you're doing with Ogerpon Rock here, guys, is very straightforward, right? You want to be protecting your other pieces or forcing them to double into you, because 100 guaranteed rock move to connect is still a very strong option in the metagame right now, and it's something that really doesn't exist outside of Rockpon. So you want to either be sending IV Cudgels as much as you can and you abusing the fact that they have to double you, or, you know, you can abuse the fact that they have to W, redirect, and let your other pieces go crazy, right? That's kind of the way you're approaching using Ogerpon Rock. I think it is a phenomenal Pokemon still, especially on the correct team. It's not as, like, slappable. You know, the Ogerpon Waters, the Ogerpon Fires, those guys, you can kind of just say, well, let's put them on the team. Ogerpon Rock does need a little bit more of a specific team to function, I think. However, I really do think it is still a very, very valuable piece when it comes to the metagame right now, especially to deal with, you know, some of the other Ogerpons, you know, stuff like the Tornadus, stuff like Entei, stuff like Gouging Fire. There is a lot of options that you can just hit that you normally wouldn't be able to hit, especially on Sun teams, right? Sun teams don't want to deal with the fire types. Boom, slap an Ogerpon Rock there now, and all of a sudden you're punishing those fire types that are on the board in front of you. The water types, well, you can do that with any Ogerpon, but Ogerpon also helps with that, right? With the Power Whip or the Horn Leech, whatever grass move you decide to use. There is a ton. Do you think it's Solar Blade? Alright, now, I'm not going to suggest using Solar Blade Ogerpon Rock, but it would be really funny. I'm not going to suggest it, but it would be really funny if the opposing Ogerpon Rock just dropped a Solar Blade into Sun. It would be very funny. I'm not going to suggest it. We're going to stick with our Power Whip here. But if you're on a Sun team, I guess in a way it's something to consider. However, I think Power Whip is much more consistent, guys. I find when you're on a Sun team and you use moves like, like Solar Blade, and you are 100% reliant on getting that attack off or getting the weather up, it becomes problematic. Power Whip, of course, will keep that more consistent, so you don't need Sun up to use this move, and I think that's actually probably just a lot more consistent, but Solar Blade would be very funny. But anyways, guys, if you're looking to slap on an Ogerpon Rock, this is definitely the set I would start with first. And then if you need something for like specific matchups, you can start taking a look at different kind of bulky variants, because you do have a decent chunk of bulk, right? You have the same stats as the other Ogerpons, so you can be bulky. You don't necessarily need to, because it's not the best optimization of the stats since you are surviving things. Whereas, but if you want to really worry about Urshifu and Mold Breaker Firepon, and you're terrified of those things, you can start deviating with the spread a little bit and have some fun. Overall, guys, Ogerpon Rock, like I said, just going to be sending Ivy Cudgels, just going to be following me more often than not. Kind of rambled here at the end of it. Hopefully not nothing too crazy. Solar Blade was funny, okay? Solar Blade was funny. Anyways, with that, I'm going to get on out of here. If you guys do enjoy this type of content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.